Tonight on Talking Points, a series of racist graffiti at Syracuse University sparking a brand new on-campus movement with protests eclipsing the 120-hour mark. How political figures across the state are responding.
Meanwhile, SU makes the call to send students in Hong Kong home early. We'll tell you why.
And the hearings in President Trump's impeachment inquiry go public. The first witnesses to take the stand and what they say the Trump White House did. Talking Points starts right now. The Not Again SU protest movement has the attention of New York lawmakers. Good evening. I'm Jack Watson.
And I'm Conor Wight. High-profile figures in New York State politics came to the sit-in protest at the Barnes Center here on campus. Just this weekend, Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh, State Senator Rachel May, and State Assemblymember Pam Hunter spoke to protesters. They offered statements of support for the movement and for students.
CitrusTV reached out to both New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and New York 24 Representative John Katko. They sent us statements condemning the recent acts of racism and anti-Semitism on campus.
Talking Points analyst Brandon Ross is here with more on the response to events here on campus. Now, Brandon, how have they actually responded to what's happening here?
So the local officials that have been sort of centering around this case, ranging from Mayor Ben Walsh to other local representatives, a lot of them have actually come through to the Barnes Center and expressed wide range of support.
Just because it is the status quo or just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's the way it should be. And the fact that you all are here demanding change and saying the status quo is not acceptable, that's the only way we move forward. So,
what's happened on campus over the course of the last week is part of a very disturbing pattern of incidents and behaviors and conditions that need to change. And it shouldn't be up to the students to change them. It shouldn't be up to the students to be the ones to say they need to change. But unfortunately it is. And these students are setting the example for all of us. I think that's amazing, and I wanted to be here to show support.
I definitely think that if this is what the students who are here are asking for, and especially as it relates to resources for organizations of color on the campus and resources relative to mental health services, which seems to be a big issue, not only on this campus but across the country, we need to be able to identify those resources and get that right.
And that's in order: Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh, congressional candidate Dana Balter, and Assembly Member Pam Hunter giving statements in regard. And John Katko, congressman from New York's 24th District, also released a statement condemning these attacks, saying, and I quote, "The unlawful messages of hate that have appeared on Syracuse University's campus have no place in our community." He went on to add that Syracuse University has long welcomed students, teachers, and visitors from around the globe, and it's critical that it remains a safe and tolerant place.
Now, Brandon, we're hearing from those lawmakers and potential lawmakers, but what about here at SU? How are administrators responding here?
So Chancellor Ken Syverud is at the apex of this. He has been told that he needs to either meet the protesters' demands by 5 p.m. or check that 7 p.m. now on Wednesday, or else they will call for him to resign. And as of right now, he has expressed wide support for a number of the measures, namely counselors for international students with more language fluency. However, on other areas, he's been less clear.
All right, Brandon, a lot to look forward to this week especially. Brandon, thank you very much. The nearly 6-month-long protest in Hong Kong has escalated again. Now universities are proving to be a new battleground. Our Sabrina Maggiore spoke to a student studying abroad in Hong Kong this semester to learn more about how the protests impact him.
That's right, guys. Syracuse University ended its Hong Kong program early this year in response to the escalation. In an email sent out to the student body on November 13th, Chancellor Syverud announced the decision, citing deteriorating safety conditions in Hong Kong. Pat Rivera is an SU student who arrived in Hong Kong in early August. He told me that he'll be staying in the country despite the university's decision to officially end the program. Protests in Hong Kong's international airport marked the first significant escalation in what started as a peaceful protest against a proposed extradition bill. Pat Rivera arrived for the start of his semester abroad in Hong Kong just as protests there began to ramp up.
At the beginning, it was at the airport, and then it moved to the streets and to the MTR stations, the metro stations, and now it's just in the universities.
As protests continued to spread throughout the city, Rivera says he felt the impact.
Every day we noticed it. Every day, if it was because we went out and we couldn't get back home because there was a huge protest that they had to shut down all the public transportation, or, we were just at the university and we would see, the students in riot gears. Yeah, we definitely noticed it every single day.
Citywide protests broke out on November 12th after riot police stormed the Chinese University of Hong Kong. That battle has continued to rage on various campuses, including at the City University of Hong Kong, where Rivera and other Syracuse University students studied. Fire broke out at the Lau building, and the clash caused the damage you see here.
This war is kind of moving into the universities, especially the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Syracuse's decision to end the program early means Rivera's official independent study period got cut short.
I'm still enjoying my time here. I'm not ready to leave.
While Rivera says he understands why the university took this action, he says he'll be sticking it out.
It's all very scary because, you don't know what's going to happen, but like I said, I'm still going to be here because I'm still in support of it. I want to be here until I can.
But once he comes home, Rivera says he'll continue to advocate for the people of Hong Kong. He says he wants to see the protesters' 5 demands met, meaning a full withdrawal of the extradition bill, amnesty for protesters, and greater voting representation.
I think it's necessary in order, for any democracy to work. What they're doing is very important.
For the remainder of his time abroad, Rivera will be finishing his independent study in Hong Kong. He also plans on traveling to other parts of Asia, that is until his scheduled flight home on December 17th. Jack and Conor, back to you.
All right, that's our reporting. Sabrina, thank you very much. Now to Washington. Tomorrow, the first of the week's public testimonies will begin at 9 in the morning with the deposition of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Vindman is reported to have been listening in on that July 25th call. This is the second week of open hearings and the 9th week of the impeachment inquiry as a whole. We're going to bring in our Talking Points analyst Haley Vaughn to take us through the highlights of the last few weeks' public hearings.
Although there were only 3 public hearings last week, there's still a lot to break down. Bill Taylor, the top U.S. diplomat to Ukraine, and George Kent, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, both testified on Wednesday. Taylor said that there appeared to be 2 channels of U.S. foreign policy in Ukraine, a regular State Department-sanctioned channel and an irregular, informal channel that was not accountable to Congress in his opening statement. Taylor says that the push for investigations was driven by the irregular channel.
It was becoming clear to me that the meeting President Zelensky wanted was conditioned on the investigations of Burisma and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections. It was also clear that this condition was driven by the irregular policy channel I had come to understand was guided by Mr. Giuliani.
Later in the week, Marie Yovanovitch, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, testified publicly about her experience with the Trump administration. During her testimony, President Trump posted a tweet criticizing her. Representative Adam Schiff asked Yovanovitch what she thought the president was trying to achieve. Yovanovitch answered that she felt intimidated by Trump's attacks.
I can't speak to what the president is trying to do, but I think the effect is to be intimidating.
This tweet by the president drew bipartisan condemnation, but Trump does not appear to be deterred. On Sunday, he tweeted again, this time belittling Jennifer Williams, a top aide to Mike Pence. NBC reports that in her closed-door deposition, Williams labeled the July 25th call as unusual and inappropriate. Williams is just one of 9 witnesses set to testify publicly this week. Kurt Volker and Gordon Sondland are both scheduled, so keep an eye out for them. Jack, Conor, back to you.
Thank you. Twitter has just shared their updated advertising policy on political ads set to begin on Friday. According to Twitter, this policy is only for paid advertisements, as the company believes that, quote, political message reach should be earned, not bought. Talking Points analyst Peyton May is here to break down how this is all set to work. Now, Peyton, what exactly what political content actually is can be ambiguous. So how is Twitter defining it?
So Twitter is defining political content as any content relating to representatives in office, any candidates, any legislation, any judicial decision. So really anything based around political content is right in that group. But also this is around election time, so I think they're trying to move on this quickly.
Peyton, let's get into the players here. Who specifically is affected by this?
So I think who really is affected are the up-and-coming candidates. The people, the incumbents already in office, already have that media attention around them. People know their names. So a lot of campaigns for new candidates coming up kind of want to buy ads on Twitter so that people know their messages, along with super PACs. Super PACs in the U.S. are very affected by this. The big game in this is going to be restructuring campaigns. Advertising companies are going to have to deal with that. Along with that, targeted media that Twitter is not allowing media to be targeted to certain zip codes, area codes, so that basically the whole country, the whole world has a different sphere than what we're getting right now.
Now, as we know, political messaging can be, in terms of the rules around it, it can be different for different groups, different individuals. We know that in broadcasting. Are there any exceptions to the way that Twitter has rolled out their policy?
Yes, so news publications are kind of exempt, sort of. It's very murky right now. But what we have here is reporting-based advertisements are going to be allowed, but advocacy-based advertisements won't. So I think the issue is going to be kind of determining which is which. There's a lot of biased media, obviously we know that. So it's kind of going to be difficult for them to police that.
Peyton, Twitter isn't a media company in the traditional sense, but it is a media aggregator, really. Has this decision by Twitter prompted any traditional media companies to make any changes?
So Facebook is keeping their own policy. They're actually still allowing people to have paid advertisements that have misleading information, and people are commenting on that. Google has kind of stayed silent on it, but they're getting a lot of pressure. I think the issue is how Twitter is going to police this activity. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, our Peyton May reporting. Peyton, thank you very much. Up next, the DACA issue now in the highest court in the land. What you should keep an eye out for next.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
The Supreme Court is deciding the legality of DACA, a program that protects undocumented children brought to the United States by their parents. The program was created by President Barack Obama by executive order, but President Trump announced the termination of the law back in 2017. About 700,000 people are currently under the protection of DACA. Talking Points analyst Michael Fernari is here to tell us more about what's at stake in this case. Michael.
Thanks, guys. Now, the question of which immigrants receive legal protections has weighed on American politicians for decades.
And in the absence of congressional action on immigration reform, President Trump instituted DACA by executive order back in 2012. Now, what is established by executive order can be reversed in the same way, and that's what President Trump chose to do in 2017. And over the last year and a half, Congress has largely abdicated when given the opportunity to legislate or reject DACA. And now, the final responsibility will fall on the Supreme Court. What hangs in the balance here? There are about 700,000 active DACA recipients, and a rejection of DACA without a new program would leave them vulnerable to deportation. Now, a group of businesses who filed in support of the program estimated that there could be a loss of $460 billion in national GDP and $90 billion less in tax revenue over the next decade should the Dreamers exit the workforce. President Trump says a compromise will be reached should the court rule in his favor, but as we've seen over the last 2 years, a compromise is far from guaranteed.
All right, Michael, we're also bringing in our analyst, Augustus LaRue. Now, gentlemen, what stood out to you in the arguments the past couple weeks?
I think a lot of what we saw was some kind of interesting statements from the liberal judges in particular. So I was looking at Sotomayor and Breyer particularly. Breyer said that he was really having trouble coming to a decision. It seemed like he was kind of wrestling between the two. Sotomayor came out with a much more forceful statement. She was particularly lamenting that President Trump kind of seemed like he was showing a little bit of ambivalence on whether or not he was going to reject the program, and then saying that he did not provide a sufficient justification for it once he did. And she went as far as to say that he, quote, ruined lives with the rejection of the plan.
So that's what we have from those opening statements. But what are the cruxes of each argument here?
Well, ultimately, in particular, the liberal wing of the court, what their argument is largely going to come down to is whether or not the legality of DACA, whether or not what the president's ultimate decision on the topic is enough to warrant effectively removing 700,000 individuals from this plan. The liberal argument, of course, is that the decision is arbitrary or capricious, in the words of Justice Sotomayor, that any such decision to remove DACA would be ultimately arbitrary.
And on the conservative side, what we're seeing is that people are saying that if you can institute a program by executive action, that means that you can take it away, and that right is established by federal agencies, and that federal agencies have that discretion.
Very quickly, gentlemen, 5 conservatives, 4 liberals. Where do you see this going?
Honestly, at this point, it could go either way. Right now, the 2 swing votes that we're looking at are Kavanaugh and Chief Justice Roberts, both of whom have expressed the inclination to side with the conservative wing on this, but as we've seen in the past, may swing the other way, ultimately leaving DACA in its current position.
Well, certainly an important case with massive implications. Gentlemen, thank you. Democrats are celebrating victories after the party won 2 governorships in the South in the past few weeks. First, Andy Beshear upset Republican incumbent Matt Bevin in Kentucky. And on Saturday, current Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards was officially reelected in Louisiana. Here to break down these 2 races and their implications for future elections is Talking Points analyst Anthony DeBundo. Anthony?
When top Democratic strategists think of strongholds across the country, Louisiana and Kentucky aren't often the first states that they focus on. But when you look across the country, Democrats have picked up seats and governorships nearly everywhere. Entering 2017, Republicans controlled 34 of the governorships. Now, for January 2020, that number will be 26. Democrats have picked up seats in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maine. The list goes on. And so while Republicans had a clean sweep in the down-ballot races, disapproval for Matt Bevin, who was the nation's least popular governor according to a poll, led to Bevin's own Attorney General, Andy Beshear, challenging him for the seat and eventually going on to win the race. If we take a look at the map here, this is the difference between 2016 President Trump's election and 2019 in Bevin's unseating. Pretty significant gains in the suburban areas. 4 years ago, Beshear benefited from Republicans staying home and choosing not to vote, while choosing not to support Bevin, while down-ballot Republicans still did well and picked up those seats. And in Louisiana, Democrats have a 2-term governor, and the Republicans no longer have a supermajority in the legislature to override his vetoes. Bel Edwards is notoriously pro-life, yet he benefited from his popular decision to expand Medicaid in the Senate. As we take a look at the map here, again, Trump 2016 significantly better than Bel Edwards ended up doing significantly better in the suburban areas around New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So while even in these deep red states that President Trump should win comfortably in 2020, Democrats have shown that their enthusiasm from the midterms isn't going anywhere, and the current suburban rejection of Republican top-of-the-ticket candidates has continued. So what may be a race that was decided by less than 100,000 votes in 2020 might be coming down to the wire again. Back to
Anthony,
you guys.
thank you. Last week, a 16-year-old shot and killed 2 of his classmates at a high school in California before turning the gun on himself, leaving a total of 3 people dead. Just the day before, the FBI released a report on the background and behaviors of lone terrorists. Here to break down that report is Talking Points analyst Jishnu Nair.
Thanks, Connor. Like you said, this report went out a day before the Santa Clarita shooting. It compiled data from 52 attacks since 1972. The report says these attacks vary in terms of background and other demographics. However, one collective trend is gender. In the sample, all of the 52 attackers were identified as men. Another trend shows over 60% of the sample size was white. The remaining 40% is divided among 5 different racial groups. The report also looked at mental stressors as a fact in its analysis. The FBI found that a quarter of attackers had been formally diagnosed with one or more mental health disorders. In July, Secret Service Director James Murray discussed the findings of a similar report made for the year of 2018.
And behaviors of the attackers. For example, half of the attackers in this report were motivated by a grievance. 2/3 had a history of mental health challenges. Nearly all had recently experienced a significant stressor in their lives, and likewise, nearly all had previously made threatening or alarming communications, either directed towards somebody or made in the presence of others.
Returning to the FBI report, it should be noted that last week's Santa Clarita shooter didn't fit to the trends described. Unlike the majority of attackers in the report, he had no history of mental stressors or a manifesto. The FBI are currently investigating his case, but have no leads currently on a motive. Back to you guys.
All right, Jishnu, thank you. With the Iowa caucus less than 70 days away, Democratic 2020 hopefuls are competing for the crucial boost that early primary state gives to their campaigns. Candidates who won't make it to the top tier in this state have historically had to end their campaigns quickly afterwards. Joining us now is Talking Points analysts Spencer Queskin and Rob Flax to detail which candidate has received an unexpected surge of support. Now, gentlemen, let's let the cat out of the bag early. Who is it?
So the breakout star in Iowa has definitely got to be Pete Buttigieg. A new Des Moines, Iowa Register poll with CNN has him at 25 points, a 10-point lead with Warren, Biden, and Sanders all tying for second place with 15, 16, and 15 again support respectively. Now, what we have to consider is that the Buttigieg we are seeing now is a fundamentally different candidate than the one that introduced himself 5 to 6 months ago. He's really trying to pivot himself as the high-energy, moderate candidate to really pick up the voters who might agree with Biden but don't feel he has the energy or the fresh face to be the leader of the party. So Buttigieg is really trying to sell him on the moderate and not really trying to say that he's more liberal or more progressive than Bernie or Elizabeth Warren as he was trying to earlier in the race.
Now, guys, we know historically the polls have been a little shaky on showing who is actually in the lead or who is actually going to win a race. And we're basing this off of one state of, well, many. So how good of an indicator really is Iowa?
Well, as you mentioned, Buttigieg is really appealing to that more moderate voice. He was a mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and so with that, he's really got the Midwest support that he needs there. And Iowa could actually set the momentum for the rest of the race here. It successfully predicted 8 out of the 10 nominees for the Democratic Party. It predicted Carter in 1980, Mondale in 1984, Clinton, who was an incumbent in 1996, Gore in 2000, Kerry in 2004, Obama in both 2008 and in 2012, and then Clinton in 2016. And it was only wrong 2 times, with Get Pass in 98 and Harkin in 92. So if Buttigieg wins Iowa, which is very likely as now, the real test for him is going to be in New Hampshire. And if he can win both, then he's really on the road to winning the Democratic nomination. And he's really trying to appeal again to that more moderate Obama-style voter, while Warren, Sanders, and Biden are really trying to appeal to that more far radical left side of the party.
Now, gentlemen, I don't like to make predictions, especially this early, but I think we might have to break that rule right now. Who do you see winning the Iowa caucus?
I think it has to be Buttigieg. I think, once again, the fact that he has that Midwestern, wholesome appeal about him and the fact that he's really registering his message with the white voters. The other states, especially in the South, he's not going to have that same level of baseline support, and New Hampshire is firmly Warren's territory, but I think Iowa is absolutely Buttigieg's to lose this time around.
Spencer, do you agree?
I completely agree. While he may not win the nomination and other states come previously, specifically New Hampshire, he's very likely right now to win Iowa. It's his territory. He's a mayor in South Bend. It's Midwest territory. He's very likely to win.
All right, that's our Spencer Queskin and Rob Flax. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Coming up next, we're looking ahead with one last goodbye. Stay with us.
When they test you, stand firm and move only when you hear the seatbelt click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Well, this is a goodbye I've been trying to avoid for a while. This is my last Talking Point show. I'm graduating from SU next month. But before I go, I want to say a huge thank you to all the people who have made this show so special for me. First to the EPs who have dedicated so much time to making this show as good as it is. Mike Riccardi, Tom Austin, Jishnu Nair, and now this year, Aaron Lyons. Oh, we got a throwback there. That is me, I guess on my first Talking Point show? Oh my gosh. Wow, good looking man right there. I also want to thank all the executive producers who worked the past 4 years to cut video, write, and do the valuable work that gets the final product on the screen. Next, a thank you to the analysts who have provided thoughtful analysis, interesting visuals, and a nonpartisan account of what is going on in the world around us. And speaking of which, there's me and my best friend right there on air. I think that's our first time on air together, documented. Goodness gracious, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, right?
Finally, speaking of which, I want to thank my co-anchors, Conor Wight and Sabrina Maggiore, who are nothing short of professionals. Speaking of Sabrina, she's right there. That is our first Live at 6 show. We look like babies. Oh my goodness. It was only 2 years ago. What am I talking about? They're great journalists, and I'm proud to call them my close friends. This is a student production, but our team at Talking Points has always treated this as so much more. The memories I've made at this show are some I won't soon forget, and for that, I really just want to say one final thank you to the Talking Points team. And I also want to congratulate Erin Lyons, who is moving on from her position as executive producer of Talking Points to become the next news director of CitrusTV News.
Yeah, that's our boss. But we'll come back to you for a minute, right? Because you're the one who's leaving. And no, it hurts, honestly, it does, because we're losing a part of our family. I think that, a lot of people chuck that word around, but I do think that the people here at Citrus are, I think you'd agree, are truly our family here on campus. It's our home away from home, and there's a lot of people that have made it special that I think would also want to say goodbye as well. We have Jishnu on air for the first time, and we mentioned Sabrina already, which we've seen on air plenty. We have Jishnu back here, and yeah, no, it's coming to a close.
So I wish I was on the desk earlier to talk a little bit more, and also to finally have you talk to me at the desk. But thank you, Jack, for making these past 3 years really amazing. I remember the first time I saw you go on air, and I thought this kid was natural. I thought he was born in a suit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're getting close to there.
That's unfortunately all the time we have for Talking Points tonight. Check us out on social media. I'm Jack Watson.
And I'm Conor Wight. Have a great night.